For thousands of years, the galaxy lived in quiet control under the Varkal Dominion, a vast alliance of ancient alien races. They ruled with order and tradition, believing that no new species could challenge their strength. To them, progress was slow, change was dangerous, and peace was kept only through fear. Many younger races had joined the Dominion, serving its powerful council. Some obeyed willingly, while others did so to survive. To question the Dominion was to question the galaxy itself. Among their records lay stories, old, dusty, and forgotten, of a strange species from a small blue planet at the edge of the Milky Way. They were called humans. Most believed those stories were myths created to entertain children. They spoke of creatures who burned like stars, who laughed in the face of fear, and who vanished before history began. The Dominion called them legends, nothing more. But legends, like embers, sometimes reignite when the universe grows dark again. Far beyond the Dominion's core worlds, trouble had begun. A new force had risen in the darkness, the Eclipse Armada. No one knew where they came from. Their ships were made of black alloy that seemed to swallow light. They spoke no language, offered no reason, and gave no mercy. They attacked colonies, destroyed trade routes, and wiped entire systems clean. World by world, the Dominion began to crumble. At first, the Council was confident. They sent their greatest fleets armed with weapons built over centuries. But the Eclipse Armada adapted quickly, learning and countering every tactic. One by one, the Dominion fleets fell silent. At the Dominion, capital in the shining halls of the Grand Council, panic had replaced pride. Generals argued, diplomats shouted, and scientists searched for answers that did not exist. High Chancellor Varen, an aged being with silver skin and calm eyes, finally raised his voice. "We must ask for help," he said quietly. 100 voices protested. "Help? From whom? Every ally we had is broken. The outer colonies burn." Varen looked out toward the stars visible through the crystal ceiling. "Not from allies," he whispered. "From the forgotten ones, the old stories." Silence filled the chamber. "Humans," he said. The council erupted in disbelief. "Humans are myths," one shouted. "They never existed," another argued. "Even if they did, they vanished thousands of years ago." But the chancellor only said, "If there is even a shadow of truth in those stories, we must try." And so, for the first time in its history, the Dominion sent a message, not to its colonies but to the edge of known space. A message carried on light waves and hope. "To the children of Earth, if you still walk among the stars, help us. The galaxy is burning." For months there was no answer. The Eclipse Armada drew closer to the Dominion's core. Planets fell every week. Refugees crowded the skies, and entire races vanished into darkness. The Dominion fleet was broken. Their admirals spoke in whispers now, not orders. Then one night, when the capital world's sky was covered in ash and fear, something strange happened. Every long-range scanner across the sector began to flash with new readings, unknown signatures entering from deep space. They were fast, organized, and large. Thousands of ships. At first, the Dominion feared it was another invasion, but when the first image came through, a dark gray ship with a blue and white emblem shining on its hull, the technicians gasped. One of them whispered, "That symbol, it matches the old archives, the legends." At the edge of the system, the human fleet arrived. Massive starships slid through the void, engines glowing with pale blue fire. Their hulls were worn from past wars, but they carried a quiet strength, like veterans returning to a battlefield they never forgot. Their leader, Admiral Sarah Kepler, stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Resolute. Her uniform was simple, her expression calm. In her eyes burned a steady determination, the kind forged by centuries of survival. She looked at the holographic display before her, showing hundreds of alien distress signals. Her officers waited for her command. "After all these years," she said softly, "they still think we're myths." Commander Ruiz, standing beside her, gave a faint smile. "Then let's remind them, Admiral." The Dominion sent a cautious signal to the human fleet. "Identify yourselves," the alien voice demanded, though it trembled slightly. "You entered Dominion space during wartime." The reply came clear and steady. "This is Admiral Sarah Kepler of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We received your call. We're here to help." For a moment, silence filled the communication line. Then, the alien commander spoke again, disbelief in every word. "Humans, you're real." Kepler nodded. "Very real. Now tell us where to begin." The first meeting between the Dominion and the humans took place aboard a neutral station orbiting the dying star Velis 3. The Dominion generals expected loud, proud warriors, but instead found humans who were quiet, polite, and direct. They did not boast about their strength or demand recognition. They simply listened. General Rethvar, a tall reptilian being with golden scales, stared at Admiral Kepler. "You came across half the galaxy to fight someone else's war. Why?" Kepler met his gaze calmly. "Because we know what happens when darkness spreads. We've lived through it before. We won't let it happen again." Rethvar studied her for a long time. "You truly believe you can defeat the Eclipse Armada?" Kepler's lips curved slightly. "We don't believe. We plan." Days later, the human fleet began its first deployment alongside the Dominion. When the alien captains saw how humans worked, they were astonished. Humans didn't rely only on technology. They relied on instinct and teamwork. Their ships were smaller than the Dominion's, but faster and more flexible. Their crews communicated with efficiency and trust. Before long, rumors spread through the fleets. "They fight like they've already seen the end and refuse to stop," one alien said. "They laugh before battles," another whispered. "Like it's not fear that drives them, but something stronger." For the first time in generations, hope returned to the galaxy. Meanwhile, on the human flagship, Kepler stood before her officers. "The Dominion doesn't believe we can win," she said. "That's fine. We'll show them." Ruiz grinned. "What's the plan, Admiral?" "We start by teaching them what humans do best," she replied. "We adapt. We survive. And we never ever surrender." Outside, the fleet formed ranks. Human and Dominion ships aligned side by side. For the first time in history, the galaxy's old rulers and its forgotten children stood together. The war for the stars had entered a new chapter. In the darkness of space, as the first combined fleet prepared for battle, Admiral Kepler watched the stars. Her reflection shone faintly in the window. "Once," she whispered, "they called us legends." She turned to her crew. "Let's give them a reason to remember why." The engines roared to life, lighting the void with blue flame. One by one, the human ships moved forward, leading the way toward the enemy lines. Behind them, Dominion vessels followed, their commanders inspired by the courage of those who had once been forgotten. And far across the galaxy, in the silent halls of the Eclipse Armada, sensors blinked red. A new enemy had entered the field, one they did not understand. The humans were coming, and the galaxy would soon learn that legends sometimes return, not to be remembered, but to fight. The galaxy had always been proud of its powerful empires, but nothing had prepared them for what they saw next, the arrival of the human fleet. It came silently, like a storm hiding in starlight. Thousands of ships, sleek and strong, glided through space with calm precision. Every hull bore the same mark, a blue circle with a single white star. To most, it was only a symbol. But to those who still remembered the ancient stories, it was a sign of Earth. The Varkal Dominion's fleet waited near the Nebula Gate, their ships damaged and their courage weak. For months they had fought the Eclipse Armada, a force that destroyed everything in its path. Their weapons had failed, their allies had fallen. But when the human ships appeared, hope stirred for the first time. On the bridge of the human flagship Resolute, Admiral Sarah Kepler stood straight, her eyes fixed on the stars. The Dominion had sent a desperate call for help, and Earth had answered. The last message they received before leaving said simply, "You are all that's left." Commander Ruiz stood beside her. "Admiral, Dominion fleets are signaling. They're asking who we are." Kepler gave a faint smile. "Then let's show them." The communication screen flickered and the face of General Rethvar, leader of the Dominion defense, appeared. His scales shimmered gold under dim lights. "Identify yourselves," he demanded. His tone was strong, but his eyes betrayed fear. Kepler replied calmly, "This is Admiral Sarah Kepler of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We received your call for help." Rethvar's expression shifted from suspicion to shock. "Humans, impossible. You vanished ages ago. The archive said your world was lost." Kepler nodded slightly. "We were silent, not gone. Now tell us, what's the situation?" Rethvar hesitated, then projected a star map. Red lights filled the display. "The Eclipse Armada controls these sectors. They destroy without reason. We tried everything, our fleets, our weapons, our diplomacy. Nothing works." Kepler studied the map. "We'll find a way." "We always do," Rethvar frowned. "You speak with confidence. You must know what you face." Kepler met his eyes. "We've faced extinction before, General. The only difference now is that we're not alone." The two fleets joined forces for the first time near the Nebula Gate. The human ships moved with careful order, forming patterns that confused the Dominion observers. To the aliens, humans were strange. They laughed before the battle, shared jokes, and smiled even while preparing for danger. To them it seemed madness. But when the Eclipse Armada arrived, that madness turned into something else, bravery. The Eclipse ships appeared like shadows, dark, sharp, and cold. Their red lights glowed like eyes of fire. No one knew what powered them or who commanded them. They simply moved forward, unstoppable. Admiral Kepler stood tall on the bridge. "They're coming in fast," Ruiz reported. "Good," she said. "Then we won't have to chase them." She turned to her crew. "You all know the plan. Remember your training. Remember why we fight." Every crew member responded at once. For life. For home, for Earth, the first wave hit. Red beams of energy cut through the void, lighting the darkness like lightning. The Dominion ships tried to defend, but their formation broke under pressure. The Eclipse Armada moved too quickly, predicting every move. But humans didn't fight by prediction, they fought by instinct. "Activate decoy beacons," Kepler ordered. Small drones flew out of the human ships, releasing false energy signals. The Eclipse ships fired toward the wrong targets, wasting their power. Then, from behind floating debris, human strike ships appeared, firing plasma torpedoes straight into the enemy's engines. The Eclipse formation twisted in confusion. On board the Dominion flagship, General Rethvar watched in disbelief. "They're not following standard patterns," his aide said. "They're not following any pattern," Rethvar replied softly. "They're creating their own." Within an hour, the tide of battle had turned. Dominion captains, inspired by the humans, began adapting too. They changed formation mid-combat, moved faster, and supported one another. For the first time, the Eclipse Armada met resistance it couldn't understand. On the Resolute, alarms blared. The enemy's largest ship, twice the size of any human vessel, was charging toward them. Ruiz shouted, "They're targeting us directly, Admiral." Kepler nodded. "That's their mistake." She pressed a button. "All ships switch to Echo Pattern 7. Follow my lead." The human fleet suddenly split apart, leaving the Resolute alone in front of the enemy. To the Eclipse Armada, it looked like weakness. They advanced quickly, preparing to destroy the human flagship. But then, from behind the nebula clouds, the rest of the fleet reappeared, hidden by gas and dust. "Now," Kepler commanded. The hidden ships unleashed a storm of firepower from multiple angles. The enemy was trapped, unable to react. Their shields collapsed and their command ship exploded in a silent burst of red and silver. Cheers erupted across both fleets. The battle was over. The humans had won. After the victory, silence filled the Resolute's bridge. The stars shone peacefully again. Ruiz turned to Kepler. "We did it." Kepler didn't smile. "We survived," she corrected. "That's just the beginning." Moments later, a message arrived from the Dominion fleet. Rethvar appeared on screen again, his voice filled with awe. "Admiral Kepler, on behalf of the Dominion, I thank you. You've done what no one else could." Kepler shook her head. "We did what needed to be done, General. Nothing more." A few hours later, as repairs began, Commander Tari, a young Varkal observer, visited the human flagship. She had been assigned to study human tactics but found herself fascinated by their spirit. She watched as humans worked side by side, repairing ships, tending to the injured, and laughing softly even through exhaustion. Their unity was unlike anything she had seen. Tari approached Kepler and asked, "Admiral, how did your people learn to fight like that? You don't seem afraid." Kepler smiled gently. "We are afraid, Tari, but fear doesn't control us. It reminds us what we're fighting for." Tari tilted her head. "And what is that?" Kepler looked out at the stars. "Hope." Later that night, as the fleets rested, rumors spread across the Dominion. Soldiers whispered about the humans, their bravery, their strange humor, their refusal to retreat. Some called them reckless. Others called them unstoppable. But all agreed on one thing: the legends were real. On distant worlds, alien children looked up at the night sky, hearing new stories about the fire-born humans who had returned to fight for the galaxy. Even those who doubted now believed. In the quiet observation deck of the Resolute, Admiral Kepler stood alone. She watched the stars drift slowly outside the window. Behind her, the faint echo of music played from the crew's quarters. Soft human songs of Earth, about home and courage. Ruiz entered quietly. "We've restored communication with the Dominion Command," he said. "They want to organize a larger strike. They think we can win this war." Kepler nodded. "We can, but only if they stop seeing us as legends and start seeing themselves as fighters." Ruiz smiled. "You always know how to turn hope into a weapon." Kepler chuckled softly. "Hope is the strongest weapon we have." The next morning, the human and Dominion fleets set course for the next battlefront. For the first time, they flew together, not as ruler and servant, not as stranger and ally, but as one force. Tari watched the stars outside and whispered to herself. They came from the forgotten world, and they brought the light with them. The humans had done more than save a battle. They had changed the way the galaxy saw courage. Where fear had ruled, now hope began to rise. And as the Resolute entered hyperspace, its engines glowing blue against the blackness, the message spread far and wide across the stars. Once they were only legends, but now the humans have returned. The victory at the Nebula Gate changed everything. For the first time in years, the Dominion saw the Eclipse Armada retreat. The galaxy that had lived in fear now dared to hope again. But hope, as the humans knew, was fragile. Victories came at a price, and every new dawn could bring another storm. After the battle, Admiral Sarah Kepler and her human fleet became the center of attention. Messages poured in from different worlds, some of praise, some of curiosity, and others of fear. The name human began to echo across the stars once more, no longer as a myth but as a reality. But peace did not return. The Eclipse Armada was far from defeated. Their leader, known only as the Void Mind, began a counterattack that shattered worlds. Within a few weeks, 3 border sectors fell. The Dominion's communication lines broke and the alliance started to weaken. On board the Resolute, Admiral Kepler studied the holographic display showing the red marks of lost systems. Commander Ruiz stood beside her, silent. The lines of battle looked like a bleeding wound across the map. Ruiz finally spoke. "They're hitting us faster than we can respond. They're not retreating, they're drawing us out." Kepler nodded slowly. "They're learning. That's what makes them dangerous." Tari, the young Varkal observer, stood near the console watching quietly. Since joining the human flagship, she had learned much about Earth's people, their laughter, their stubbornness, their courage. But what amazed her most was their calm even in chaos. "How do you stay so focused when everything falls apart?" she asked softly. Kepler looked at her and smiled faintly. "Because falling apart isn't an option. Not for us." The next mission was desperate. The planet Ralos 9, home to a Dominion colony, was under siege by the Eclipse Armada. If it fell, the enemy would gain control of the entire sector. The Dominion wanted to abandon it, calling it a lost cause, but Kepler refused. "Every life matters," she said firmly during the command meeting. "If we run now, we tell the enemy that fear decides our path." General Rethvar, appearing via hololink, shook his head. "You'll lose too many ships. The Armada is too strong there." Kepler's voice remained calm. "Then we'll find another way." The human fleet prepared to depart. The Dominion ships hesitated, uncertain if they should follow. In the end, Only a small group of volunteer vessels joined, captains who had witnessed humanity's courage at Nebula Gate. When they arrived near Ralos 9, they found the sky already burning. Dozens of Eclipse ships surrounded the planet, blocking all escape. Ruiz looked at the readings and muttered, "They've already won this battle on paper." Kepler smiled faintly. "Then let's rewrite the paper." The human fleet moved fast. Instead of attacking head-on, they used the planet's magnetic storms to hide their signals. Small strike teams flew through the clouds, striking at the enemy's weak points, communications, power cores, and engines. The Eclipse Armada, used to predictable tactics, couldn't understand what was happening. Their formations broke apart as confusion spread. Meanwhile, Dominion officers watched in awe. "They fight like shadows," one whispered. "They fight like they've done this 1,000 times," another said. Tari, aboard the Resolute, saw it too. The humans didn't follow traditional commands. They trusted their instincts and each other completely. It wasn't just skill, it was unity. Within hours, the blockade was broken. Supply ships reached the surface of Ralos 9, rescuing thousands of civilians. But the enemy wasn't finished. From deep space, a massive Eclipse dreadnought appeared, a ship larger than any human or Dominion vessel. Its hull glowed with red energy and its weapons could destroy an entire fleet in minutes. "Admiral, it's locking onto us," Ruiz shouted. Kepler didn't flinch. "All ships, defensive formation. Prepare to hold." The dreadnought fired. A beam of pure energy sliced through space, destroying 2 Allied ships instantly. The shockwave rattled the Resolute. Sparks flew across the bridge, but the crew held their stations. Kepler spoke through the intercom, her voice calm and steady. "This is Admiral Kepler to all hands. We hold this line. Not one step back. Humanity didn't come this far to give up now." Her words spread across every ship, human and alien alike. The Dominion captains, hearing her voice, felt their courage return. They reformed their lines, fighting beside the humans once again. For hours, the battle raged. Space was filled with flashes of blue and red light. Ruiz turned to Kepler, exhausted. "Admiral, our shields are failing. We can't take another hit." Kepler stared at the massive dreadnought on the screen. "Then we'll make our last one count." She pointed to a glowing spot near the enemy's hull. "That's their main energy core. If we hit that, the chain reaction will cripple them." Ruiz hesitated. "But that means flying straight into their firing range." Kepler smiled, calm as ever. "Then we better fly fast." The Resolute turned sharply, engines roaring. The enemy's weapons locked on instantly, firing again and again. The bridge shook violently. Alarms screamed, but no one left their post. Tari held onto her console, watching in disbelief. "You're heading straight into their guns," she shouted. Kepler replied with quiet determination. "Sometimes the only way forward is through." As they approached the enemy ship, the Resolute's forward cannons charged. "All power to weapons," Kepler ordered. "Fire everything we've got." The blast struck the dreadnought's energy core. For a brief second, the enemy ship glowed brighter than a sun, and then vanished in a silent explosion of light. Cheers echoed across the fleets. The Eclipse Armada began to retreat. The battle for Ralos 9 was won. After the fight, silence filled the bridge. Many ships were damaged and hundreds of crew members were lost. Yet amid the sorrow there was pride. Tari looked at Kepler with new respect. "You risked everything. You could have escaped." Kepler shook her head. "If we ran, others would have died in our place. That's not who we are," Ruiz added quietly. "That's what it means to be human." Back on the Dominion capital, news of the victory spread quickly. Worlds that had once doubted now began to believe. The council members who had called humans reckless now called them heroes, but Admiral Kepler didn't care for praise. She sat alone in her quarters, staring at the stars outside the viewport. Her hands rested on a small metal badge, the insignia of Earth's lost fleets. Ruiz entered quietly. "Command wants you to lead a new joint task force," he said. "They're calling it the Allied Front." Kepler nodded. "It's about time they learned to fight together." Ruiz smiled faintly. "They're learning from you." Kepler looked at the stars and whispered, "Then maybe there's still hope." On the following day, she gathered her officers and spoke to the entire fleet. Her words were simple but powerful. "We are not here to conquer. We are here to protect. Every world we save, every life we defend, it matters. We will fight not because we are legends, but because we are human, and humans never stop trying. Those words spread across the galaxy like light through darkness. Even in the most distant corners where fear had once ruled, people began to believe that the Eclipse Armada could be defeated. Tari stood on the deck, watching the stars drift by as the fleet prepared to jump to the next front. She thought about everything she had seen, the courage, the unity, the sacrifices. She finally understood why humans had once been called fireborn. They carried the fire of hope inside them, a fire that no darkness could destroy. As the Resolute entered hyperspace, its engines glowing like a blue comet, Tari whispered to herself, they were once only stories. But now, they are the heart of the galaxy. The humans had come not just to fight, but to remind the stars what courage truly meant. And the war for the galaxy had only just begun. The stars had grown quieter after the Battle of Relos 9. But silence in war was never peace. It was the pause before the next storm. Admiral Sarah Kepler stood at the main viewport of the Resolute. The stars drifted slowly by, reflecting in her calm eyes. Around her, the crew worked with quiet focus, repairing systems, tending to wounded allies, and preparing for the next campaign. Though Relos 9 was a victory, Kepler knew the war was far from over. The Eclipse Armada was regrouping, and the mysterious Void Mind had not shown itself since the destruction of its dreadnought. Yet something was changing across the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, dozens of alien species, once divided by politics and pride, were now standing side by side. They called this new unity the Allied Front, led by none other than humanity. Aboard the Dominion capital world of Valinor, the Great Council chamber was filled with representatives from every major world. The tall crystalline towers gleamed in the pale light, and the air buzzed with tension. Kepler entered the chamber with Commander Ruiz and Tari, the young Varkal observer, who had become her bridge liaison. The moment she walked in, silence fell. All eyes turned toward the human admiral, the one who had done the impossible. High Chancellor Kareth of the Dominion spoke first. Admiral Kepler, your people have achieved what we once thought legend. You've united us in a way even peace treaties could not. Kepler gave a respectful nod. Unity isn't a miracle, Chancellor. It's a choice, and we must keep choosing it every day even when it's hard. There was quiet murmuring across the chamber. Many of the delegates had never seen a human before. To them, humans were supposed to be myths, heroes who vanished long ago after the fall of Earth's star system. Yet here stood one in the flesh, calm and strong. Counselor Theron, an elder from the zebra species, leaned forward. We hear stories about Earth, about your people who fought when others ran. But tell us, Admiral, why? Why risk everything for a galaxy that once forgot you? Kepler met his gaze. Her voice was soft but carried weight. Because it's not about who remembers us. It's about who still needs us. The room went silent again. For the first time, the alien leaders truly understood what drove humanity. Not pride, not conquest, but purpose. Later that evening, as the Resolute prepared to depart Valinor, Tari found Kepler alone on the observation deck. The Admiral stood quietly, watching the twin moons rise. Tari hesitated before speaking. You spoke beautifully today. The whole council was moved. Kepler smiled faintly. Words can move people, Tari, but actions make them believe, and we'll need both if we're going to win this war. Do you think we can win? Tari asked softly. Kepler's gaze drifted to the stars. We can't win by strength alone. The Void Mind is not just a commander, it's an idea. It feeds on fear. So if we want to win, we'll have to take that fear away. Tari thought about that for a moment. You really believe in hope, don't you? Kepler nodded. Hope built every world you see. It's what makes legends real. Days later, the Allied front gathered at Outpost Seraph, a massive space station built near a dying star. It became the central command for the new alliance. There, scientists, engineers, and soldiers from across the galaxy worked together for the first time in history. Human engineers shared their knowledge freely, old Earth designs, fusion drives, stealth shields, and something even more precious, trust. For many aliens, this was the first time they had seen humans laugh while working, argue like family, and push themselves far beyond exhaustion just to fix a single broken relay. It inspired them. They work like they're building something bigger than a war, one Dominion officer said quietly. Commander Ruiz overheard and replied, That's because they are. We're not just fighting to survive. We're fighting so that no one has to live in fear again. Meanwhile, deep within the shadow sectors, the Void Mind was watching. Hidden aboard an enormous black fortress, it observed human broadcasts and recorded their speeches. The humans confused it. They were not the strongest nor the oldest, nor the most advanced species, but their will was unlike anything it had seen. They do not retreat even when logic demands it, one of its drones reported. The Void Mind replied in a cold, echoing tone. Then they must be made to lose hope. Break their spirit and their allies will scatter. Its new plan began, a strike aimed not at their fleets, but at their hearts. A few weeks later, while the Allied front was celebrating new victories, news arrived that shook everyone. The human colony ship Dauntless, carrying over 5,000 civilians and supplies, had vanished while crossing the Theta Rift. No trace. No signal. Ruiz slammed his hand on the table. It's a trap. They knew exactly where our routes were. Kepler stayed quiet, analyzing the transmission logs. The Theta Rift was dangerous, a maze of gravity storms and distorted space, but it also held ancient communication relays from the lost human colonies. Tari watched her closely. You're not thinking of going there, are you? Kepler looked up. If we don't, no one else will. Those are our people, and maybe something else is waiting for us there. Ruiz frowned. It could be a trick. Kepler nodded. Then we'll outsmart the trick. The Resolute and a small task force jumped into the Theta Rift. Instantly, space twisted around them. The stars stretched like ribbons and strange static filled the screens. Inside the distortion, ghostly echoes of old signals played, faint human voices from long ago. This is the colony ship Orion's Flame. Mayday. Earth Command, do you read? Tari shivered. Are those recordings? Kepler shook her head slowly. No, those are real. The rift must be reflecting time. As they moved deeper, they found something astonishing. A massive human station hidden inside the rift. Its hull was ancient, covered in dust and debris, but its lights were still glowing faintly. Ruiz stared. That's impossible. This is pre-Exodus era. That station's over 500 years old. Kepler's heart raced, set a docking course. When they entered the station, it felt like stepping into history. The walls bore the emblem of the United Earth Defense Corps, the same insignia Kepler wore on her uniform. Inside, they found cryo chambers, hundreds of them, still active with people frozen in time. A small flicker of a hologram appeared, a woman's voice, weary but proud. This is Commander Helen Shaw of Earth Fleet Outpost Theta Prime. If you are seeing this, then humanity has survived. We held the line, waiting for our brothers and sisters to return. The crew watched in silence. Tari's eyes widened. They waited all this time? Kepler's throat tightened. They never gave up. Even when they thought the rest of us were gone. Suddenly, alarms blared. Outside the station, several Eclipse ships appeared. The Void Mind had followed them. Ruiz shouted, "They found us!" "Shields up!" Kepler's calm returned instantly. "We protect this station. Those people gave everything for hope. We won't let it die here." The battle inside the rift was unlike any before. Gravity waves twisted ships and sensor readings flickered constantly. But the humans fought with precision and courage, guiding their allies through the chaos. At the height of the fight, Kepler ordered, "Activate the station's old defense systems." The ancient turrets came alive, glowing blue as if the station itself remembered its purpose. They fired alongside the Allied ships, destroying the enemy one by one. When the battle ended, the station stood safe. The cryo chambers were intact, their ancient guardians protected once more. Kepler looked out at the stars, her voice quiet but full of pride. They waited 5 centuries and we came. The legends they believed in are standing here today. Tari smiled softly. And now the galaxy believes too. As the Resolute left the rift, the crew watched the stars steady again. Behind them, the restored station sent out a signal across the galaxy, a beacon of hope, carrying one simple message: we are still here. And across countless worlds, those words echoed, lighting fires in hearts that had long gone cold. Humanity had once been legends. Now they were living proof that legends could walk among the stars. But Kepler knew the war was not yet over. The Void Mind was still out there and the final confrontation was coming. Still, As she looked at the glowing beacon on the screen, she allowed herself one quiet thought. Maybe this time we're not alone anymore. The galaxy had changed. The human fleet had saved countless worlds, turned the tide of battle, and restored hope to those who thought darkness would never end. Yet even as victories mounted, the shadow of the Void Mind loomed over all. Admiral Sarah Kepler stood on the bridge of the Resolute, gazing at the stars. Her crew moved quietly around her, repairing, recalibrating, and preparing for the next mission. Every star out there was a reminder that the war was far from over. "This is it," Kepler said softly to Commander Ruiz. "The final front." Ruiz nodded, though his expression was grim. "Everything we've fought for comes down to this." "Are we ready?" Kepler smiled faintly. "We were born ready." The Allied front had gathered near the Eclipse Core, a region of space that seemed empty but pulsed with dangerous energy. The Void Mind had built its fleet here, a massive armada designed to crush any resistance. The Dominion ships quivered under the pressure of their enemies' numbers. They were strong, yes, but they had never faced anything like the combined power of the Void Mind. Kepler walked through the human flagship, checking on her crew. Each soldier, engineer, and pilot moved with focus and calm. Fear existed, of course, but it never stopped them. They had survived worse and had always pushed forward. Tari, now a full member of the crew, approached Kepler. "Admiral, the enemy fleet, it's massive. Are you certain we can win?" Kepler's gaze hardened. "We don't win by counting numbers. We win by knowing what we fight for and refusing to stop until it's done." The battle began without warning. Thousands of Eclipse ships surged forward, dark shadows against the stars. Red beams tore through the void, cutting down smaller vessels. Alarms screamed across the Allied front as ships scrambled to respond. "Hold your formation," Kepler shouted. "Remember the drills? Remember Rallos 9. Human strike teams darted between massive enemy ships, dodging fire while guiding Dominion allies. The smaller, faster ships acted as shadows, striking where the enemy least expected. Ruiz reported rapidly, "Admiral, they're trying to separate us. If they cut the Dominion ships off, we'll lose half the fleet." Kepler's hand rested on the control panel. "Then we'll keep them together. Activate the Nebula Maneuver. All ships follow my lead." The Nebula Maneuver was a human tactic adapted from old Earth fleet strategies. Ships would split into multiple groups, moving through clouds of gas and dust to confuse sensors, then regroup for a concentrated strike. The Eclipse Armada was prepared for standard tactics, but humans never fought standard. As the Allied front emerged from the nebula, they struck. Concentrated beams fired at the enemy's weak points, crippling massive warships. The Void Mind's fleet, despite its power, faltered. For the first time, the galaxy watched as humans led not just an attack, but a masterclass of strategy, courage, and precision. Hours passed in a blur of light, explosions, and energy storms. Ships moved like living organisms, coordinated, fast, and unpredictable. The Dominion admirals watched in awe as the humans led the way, repairing ships in real time, rescuing wounded crews, and never hesitating under fire. At one point, the Resolute was surrounded on all sides by enemy vessels. Beams tore across the hull, shields flared, and alarms screamed. Ruiz shouted, "Admiral, they're cutting us off." Kepler's eyes narrowed. "Not today. Full forward, use the warp rifts as cover." The human fleet twisted through space-time distortions, striking the enemy from impossible angles. The Void Mind's drones could not predict their movements. Even Tari, who had grown accustomed to human tactics, gasped. "I've never seen anything like this," she whispered. At the heart of the Void Mind's fleet, the command fortress pulsed with red energy. It was the source of its power and its control. Kepler knew that to end the war they had to reach it. "Prepare the strike group," she ordered. "I'm leading the charge." Ruiz shook his head. "It's suicide." Kepler's voice was firm. "No, it's the only way forward." The strike group formed around the Resolute, moving like a spear through the enemy lines. Smaller human ships followed, distracting the enemy and drawing fire. Dominion ships covered the flanks, inspired by the humans' fearlessness. Inside the fortress, the Void Mind sensed the approach. It focused all its energy on the human flagship, sending waves of psychic pressure meant to break morale. But humans did not bend to pressure. They adapted. On board the Resolute, crew members felt the push, a cold weight against their minds. Kepler walked calmly to the bridge center. Remember what we're fighting for. Focus on your team, not fear. One by one, the crew adjusted, syncing their minds with their roles, their courage stronger than any force. The void mind growled, not with sound, but with the vibration of the fleet around it. Humans were supposed to be legends, forgotten and powerless, and yet, here they were, storming the fortress without hesitation. The final strike was simple but effective. Kepler piloted the Resolute straight toward the fortress, dodging fire while Ruiz coordinated the attack. Human torpedoes struck the core, and Dominion ships amplified the energy blast. A massive explosion erupted, brighter than a sun. The Void Mine's fortress collapsed inward, sending waves of energy that disabled enemy ships. The Eclipse Armada scattered, leaderless and broken. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was free from the terror that had once seemed unstoppable. After the battle, silence filled the void. The Allied front regrouped, counting losses and tending to the wounded. Many ships had been destroyed and countless brave souls would not return. Yet amidst the grief, there was relief, hope, and pride. Tari walked to Kepler, her voice quiet. "They're gone. It's finally over." Kepler looked at the stars, now calm and shining. "For now," she said, "the galaxy will rebuild. We've done our part, but the work is just beginning." Ruiz added softly, "We showed them what humans can do." Kepler nodded. "We didn't just fight. We reminded the galaxy what courage looks like." Weeks later, the Allied front held a gathering near the liberated worlds. Delegates, soldiers, and civilians came together, celebrating the end of the Eclipse threat. Songs of Earth, Varkal, Zevra, and countless other species filled the air. Kepler walked among them, smiling quietly as she saw the joy her fleet had brought. Children, once terrified of the stars, now played games inspired by human heroes. Entire worlds had learned that courage could be contagious. Tari came alongside her. "You've done more than win a war, Admiral," she said. "You've made legends real." Kepler looked at the young Varkal. "Legends were never about us. They're about what people can become when they refuse to give up." In the distance, a signal appeared on the Resolute's sensors. It was faint, almost imperceptible, a small human colony reaching out after centuries of silence. Kepler smiled. "The fire still burns," she whispered, "and now it's up to the galaxy to keep it alive." Ruiz, standing beside her, added, "They'll remember us not as invaders or conquerors, but as guardians." Kepler's eyes met the stars, calm but fierce. Not guardians, humans, and anyone else brave enough to fight alongside us. The galaxy had changed forever. Humans had returned, not as myths, not as stories whispered to children, but as living proof that courage, unity, and hope could reshape the stars. Entire species now stood together, ready to rebuild, explore, and protect one another. Where once darkness had ruled, light now spread across countless worlds. And humanity, once a legend, had become the heartbeat of a new age. The stars finally felt alive. Admiral Kepler looked out at the endless void, a smile on her face. "Once we were only legends. Now we are the future." And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy could breathe freely, knowing that even in the deepest darkness, humans would always stand and fight.